Are we on?
Yep.
We are on. Okay. Parshat Teruma. Parshat Teruma is very, if you like construction, and if you're an artisan, you like this parsha, because this parsha talks about building stuff. So whoever said Jews are not in construction, obviously never got into this parsha, right?
Usually syndication of the deal, but
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't say who did it. It said the Jews oversaw it. You know, there's a Jewish comedian who said every Jew has, a contractor. No, I know a contractor not to use. So what does he do? He walks around Home Depot. You see a bunch of Jews walking around Home Depot. I don't know what is it. I need the thing that goes into the thing, connects to the thing. So then someone walks over to him and says, "Looks like you need a contractor." No, I'll tell you a contractor who not to use. But Parshat Teruma deals with the construction of the Mishkan, and we're chalking up to the accident. And it would seem this parsha is very blah. I mean, it's nice, it's cool. Remind me, I'll bring from my home. I have these nice picture books. I think I brought it last year, of the construction of the different materials and items in the Mishkan. It's a very, very nice book. I think Art Scroll put it out. It's called The Mishkan. There's another book about the temple and everything else. So if you remind me before Shabbos, I will bring it here.
Bring it.
Thank you. I didn't say which Shabbos.
It's before Shabbos.
Yeah, exactly. And I never said how long before Shabbos. Yeah. So the question we're going to discuss is that this is a very, very common question that Chabad house rabbis face. You ask someone to do something, say, maybe go talk to him about, maybe keeping more kosher, or maybe show him how to put on tefillin, or maybe you lead the service, or maybe you give the class an ALEF basis. Me? Rabbi, that's not my job. So I'm not the rabbi, you're the rabbi. That's why you get paid the big bucks, exactly.
Somebody paying him?
Right. If I'm going to fantasize, I might as well, go big. Right?
I thought it was a purely volunteer job.
Yeah.
And what do I know?
Exactly. So in this week's lesson, we're going to discuss the concept that if you know, you teach. If you have what to give, you give. And having what to give doesn't mean you have a lot to give. It means you have more than the other person. So, if you know ALEF Beis, you know the prayers. Actually, I reached out to Joe. Remember that gentleman who came a couple times? He was sat in the back. Not Joe Friedman, the regular Joe. It was another guy. He came a couple times. That heavyset fellow. He joined us for the Kiddush.
I don't know, but you're on camera when you're saying this.
Whatever. I'm just trying to give you
Well, I'm sitting all the way up at the front. If he's all the way up at the back, how am I going to see him?
all the way.
Let alone hear him.
Dramatic.
Right.
So I asked him. I see you didn't come in a few weeks. He said, "Listen, the service goes too fast," which I understand. The guy didn't know anything about Judaism, didn't know about the bracha on talis. I mean, he's really starting from the beginning. We come in here and we're ripping along, and I explained to him, "Listen, if we go slow speed, we're never going to get out of here. The idea is to do the prayer as fast as possible. It doesn't mean you have to go the speed we're going." As I told him, the best thing to do is to sit down next to somebody, because I think a couple times he sat, he didn't know anybody. So he sat by himself. I said, sit down next to somebody who knows, and they can show you. And the people you think know, they know because they've been coming for many years. It takes practice. I mean, to familiarize. You don't just walk in and,
It's not like some religions where they dunk you and you're already off.
No, we don't. We also dunk.
It's where the dunking came from.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
they only dunk, once and that's it. You've been
Yeah.
done.
Okay, so let's learn a lesson from. Probably should turn this on.
That helps.
Is it on? No.
It also helps to have a battery in it.
Are we on? Oh, here we go. Okay. So we're going to discuss the Mishkan. So very, very quickly, the Mishkan was a portable temple. The Jewish people came down. Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the second tablets after the sin of the golden calf. Now, there's a whole argument between commentaries was the mitzvah of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, given because of the sin of the golden calf, or it was all along in the plans, and Moshe didn't have a chance to communicate it to the Jewish people until after the sin?
The bottom line is, the people were doing their thing, but Hashem knew what was going to happen. So it didn't make any difference whether it was
Of course it
included
does.
in the plan the first time around
Of course
or
it
the
does.
second time.
Of course it does.
It was going to happen.
But what purpose does it serve?
The
That's
purpose might change.
okay. So
By the
there you go.
deed.
So there you go. So some people maintain, no, it's a good question. It's a good question, but the question is the purpose behind it, right? Was it a response to a human weakness, or was always God understood that there had to be godliness had to be contained, so to speak. Society would not behave properly around such exposure to godliness. Regardless, so he tells Moshe to build this Mishkan. Mishkan comes from the word shachen, which in modern Hebrew means neighbor, but it means to dwell. A place for the Shechina, which also means to dwell, for godliness to dwell. And he gave Moshe all these specifications. The main sanctuary was 30 feet by 15 feet. And it had a back room called the Holy of Holies, and it had the Ark of the Covenant in there. For more, see Indiana Jones. And then the front room was called the Holy, and they had three items. It had the showbread. There was a table with 2 stacks of 6 loaves. It had the small altar, which they would bring incense only. And then they had vegetarian altar. And then they had the menorah. And then outside that, it wasn't a building because it had no roof. The roof was tapestries and skins of goat and different things. And then in the courtyard was the large altar where they had, it's called the copper altar, where they had multiple fires. That's where the animal sacrifices were. And they also had the wash basin. Now, if you look at a picture, you look at a drawing of the Beis Hamikdash, the temple in Jerusalem had the same layout. It was just larger.
More permanent.
Well, permanent, but also larger. It wasn't built with the same exact measurement, same exact scale, but everything larger. So today we're going to discuss the menorah. The menorah is a very fascinating piece of furniture. Now, the menorah was one of 2 items in the Mishkan that you could not weld. It had to be made out of one solid piece of gold. That was the menorah and the cover to the ark. The cover, if you look at, imagine in your mind the Ark of the Covenant, you have the box and the guys and the winged figures on top. That winged figures on top was a separate piece. That's actually not called the ark. That's called the kaporos, the cover. That cover with the 2 winged figures, cherubs or cheruvim, that all had to be made out of one solid piece of gold. No welding.
We're talking both,
Both.
and the cover all were one.
One solid piece of gold. No welding. They threw a bunch of pieces of gold into the fire. They made a big cholent, and then they molded it. Now,
So theoretically, they had a mold to pour it into.
No, I think with a hammer they shaped
They
it.
had to have an original shape.
No,
Once it was melted and all the gold was in one big chunk,
yeah,
it was in some sort of a container.
I'm sure.
It wasn't just sitting on the fire. So,
Obviously, I think it's a
it had
crucible, right?
A crucible.
Yeah,
That would be an adequate description.
right.
But
So you're saying maybe they made a shape of the ark, maybe?
they
I don't-
they had to make some sort of a shape because the crucible, if they allowed the gold to solidify in the crucible,
Right,
there were chances that it would stick to the crucible,
Right.
rendering it unusable for any other
right.
purpose.
So in one of the things we're going to read in 2 weeks, that Hashem tells Moshe, I filled with knowledge B'Tzalel and Eliyav. B'Tzalel was from the tribe of Yehuda. Eliyav was from the tribe of Dan. It was obviously a lot of things were very, very complex to make, and God said, you have to become master. But Hashem said, I uploaded to his memory his memory drive,
Memory stick.
everything. It's interesting that with the kaparas, with the cover, although it was 2.5 amas is about 4 feet, 4 feet long, about 3 feet, 2.5 feet wide, and the cover itself was 3 inches, like the tefach. Then you had the 10, then you had the 2 winged figures, and that went up 10 tefachim, which is like 30. The top of the wing was 30 inches from the cover.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, actually, it says in the Gemara, one rabbi says, how did they carry that? Because you had, according to Rashi, I think we discussed this one time. According to Rashi, the Aron was actually 3 boxes. It was a solid gold box, a wood box. No, that's disgusting. It's someone else. Sorry. It was a solid gold box, a wood box, and then an inner gold box. Then inside, you had these 2 massive stone tablets, sapphire, which is very heavy as well. On top of that, you had this cover, solid gold.
Wasn't there fabric inside as well?
No.
No fabric.
No fabric, no felt. So one rabbi says, and 4 guys carried, only 4 guys.
Oh.
I said, how did they lift it? So the answer said the people didn't carry the Aron carried them. Basically, them picking up the Aron was a formality. The ark was miraculous beginning to end. Its existence, it didn't take up space. But anyway, the point I was getting to was that when Hashem tells Moshe the construction of the ark, we don't find that Moshe has any problems understanding how to make it. When we come to the menorah, so if you look at text 1 on the second line, if you notice, the first line says, and you shall make a menorah. Okay? The second line says, the menorah shall be made. What's the difference?
One, they're telling you who's going to do it. The other one says it's just going to happen.
Well, the second part of his statement was more correct than the first one. First part of the statement is Hashem speaking to Moshe, you shall make the menorah. The second part says, it shall be made. So the commentaries explain, Rashi brings down, that Moshe couldn't understand how to do it. How am I going to make this? It's impossible. If Moshe can't understand it, no one's understanding. So Hashem said, just throw the gold into the fire. Don't worry about it. It shall be made. I'll take care of it. Now, if you look at the picture on the next page, I think it's the next page, you'll see this is the Rambam's menorah. Now, on the Torah says, here you go. So on the menorah, there were 22 cups. There were 11 knobs and 9 flowers. If you look at the way the Rambam draws it, drew it. By the way, this is actually a copy of the Rambam's drawing. We have this manuscript. I think it's in the Israeli Museum. So the Rambam, so they're called flowers, but in the Rambam's drawing you can see it's like a half circle, and there's knobs or bulbs. Those are circles, and then you have the cups. Now, notice. Well, before we get into what's going on in the class, are the branches of the menorah straight or round? Well, I know you can see the picture.
Straight or round? You mean?
Yeah. Curved? Are they straight? Yeah.
Curved.
So most people, a lot of people, draw the menorah with curved branches. Why?
Because it's easy to build that way.
You've seen pictures that way.
Because if you go to the Arch of Titus in Rome, where it depicts the Jews of Judea being led into slavery, they're carrying a menorah, and the menorah there has round branches. And some people say this drawing of the Rambam, that this is not indicative, or doesn't tell us for sure what the branches were straight around. The Rebbe took a very strong opinion about this. The Rebbe said to suggest that the Rambam would do something. The Rambam and everything in all his works is exact. If the Rambam wanted to draw around, he would draw around. You see, he has a semicircle there. It's not like in the base, It's not like he couldn't draw around. So the Rambam draws stick, it means it's straight. Now, Rashi, another commentator in the Torah, also seems to suggest this, the branches were straight, because the Hebrew word for branch is kaneh. Kaneh also means a reed. A reed is straight. So the Rebbe is quite adamant that the branches of the menorah were straight. That's why you'll never see a Chabad logo with curved branches. Now you might ask, okay, but we have the curved branches in the Arch of Titus. So the Rebbe gave a few answers, and I hope I remember I'm quoting correctly. He said, first of all, it could be that the Arch of Titus wasn't made immediately. They saw it happening, they witnessed it, but it's not for sure. It doesn't tell you that's exactly what the menorah was. You think they had the menorah when they was making the arch? And number one. Number two, even if, let's say they saw correctly, and let's say the menorah that they took was round, but that was the second temple. We had the first temple, and there's a whole argument in the Gemara. How much did the Jews get back after when the first temple was pillaged? How much did the Jews get back? I mean, you think the Persians were just going to let them walk away with this? And by the way, the menorah was 54 inches tall. You know, talking about a solid gold ornament. So we don't even know where the original menorah is. Forget about the Romans. We know at the end of the first temple, the ark was hidden, and some other things. Maybe they hid Moshe's menorah. That's number two. Number three, we also know that King Solomon when he built the temple, and he made a much larger structure, he built replica menorahs. We have no idea if he did exactly that. Maybe he built a room. Maybe he wanted to distinguish between. There's so much we don't know. So just because it's on the Arch of Titus, that doesn't tell us what it was in the temple. As a Jew, and as a Torah Jew, we should look to our sources. I'll tell you, by the way, a separate argument. This is more has to do with next week than it does with this week. But next week we're going to learn about the clothing of the Kohen Gadol. And the Kohen Gadol had a headband, golden headband. Nike, Under Armour. So, yeah.
With
So
a swoop on it.
yeah, exactly. So it said on it two words: Kodesh LaHashem, holy to God, sanctified to God. Are those two words in one line or two lines? So the Gemara argues about this. I mean, the rabbis argue. One rabbi says it was on one line. One rabbi says no, it was two lines. It said LaHashem on the top line and Kodesh on the second line. You can't put the word Kodesh higher than God's name. Another rabbi says, I saw it. It's on one line. I was in Rome, I saw it. So I told the rabbi, he says, either you're mistaken. You know, eyewitnesses make mistakes all the time. You're mistaken. Mm-hmm. Or even if you're not mistaken, who says that's original? Maybe it's a copy. You have no idea. I mean,
Facsimile.
yeah, so anyway, so that was just a side rant about the temple. I'll bring the books. The books have a lot of this information. But let's look at the Rambam's drawing for a moment. The Rambam's drawing, what do you notice that's strange?
The cups point up and
The cups point down. That's another difference. So most people who, even if they draw the menorah with straight branches, they'll put the cups up. Why? Because it's logical that the cup should be up. The Rebbe said, no, the Rambam doesn't do things for no reason. If he drew it facing down, there's a reason. And today we're going to learn the reason why the Rambam drew the cups facing down. Now, first,
The triangles of the cup?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, triangles of the cups. Sorry.
Okay.
So first, the Gemara. Well, how do we know the cups were like that? So the Rambam gets it from the Gemara, which is text number 2. Text number 2, which says they were like Alexandrian cups. Now, by the way, the Rambam knew a thing or two about Alexandrian cups. He lived in Alexandria. And you see Maimonides in text number 3. It says, which you look, go back to the drawing. It says they have wide tops and narrow bases. So now, okay, so now comes the problem. When they built the Mishkan, everything was right side up. So let's take for example the wooden beams. Now, when you're building wooden beams, and they cut it out to be perfect squares, you can do kind of like a log cabin, right? Or you can. Which way did they do it? They did it standing up. Why? Because the Gemara says, text number 4, that everything has to be done in the way they grow. That it has to be in the normal, natural state. So now we have a question on the Rambam, or we have the question on the way to Rambam. Well, not the Rambam, but what the Rambam says the cups were, it's opposite than its natural state. Why would we put the cups that way? It seems pointless, unless you're like those kids who like to pile the cups on. Look what I made, right?
Yeah.
So and also why that type of cup? And what if it's a beer mug? Wide at the bottom, wide at the top. Or what if, I don't know? I'm sure there's other cups where, what are those wine? What are they called? The wine. I have one of these.
Carafe?
No, the wine bottles. They're.
It was a carafe.
Huh?
It was called a carafe.
Is that what it is? To aerate the wine, it's narrow at the bottom and narrow at the top. Why this particular shape? And again, nothing in the Torah is, I don't know. It looks nice. Okay, so in order to answer that, we have to get into why do we have a Beis HaMikdash in the first place? What was the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash? Or the Mishkan? What's the purpose of the temple?
To provide a home for God.
Okay, but
A place for him to rest when he's here.
it's like a vacation home.
Yeah.
God's very rich. There's people who have vacation homes in one in Miami, one in Tuscany.
And one here in Pembroke Pines.
For sure, obviously. Yes. He travels a lot.
God needs a vacation home.
No.
After dealing with people like me.
Yeah.
Seems like a good reason to get away.
So the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash, or the Mishkan, was the godliness. See, when we go home, we stay home. We don't want anyone to come to our house. There's a very funny comedian. I think he's a clean comedian. His name is Sebastian something. Italian guy. He's hilarious. So he has this whole bit that in the olden days, when we were growing up, he says, we always had a cake just in case guests stopped over. And then, all of a sudden the doorbell would ring, everyone would run to the door, their socks half off their feet. Hey, look who's here. Come on in. What are you doing here? I was in the neighborhood, so I figured I'd stop by. Yep. Yeah, want some cake? How do you want me to put up a pot of Senka? And he goes to the crowd. Who over here ever heard of Senka? I actually told that to somebody. What's Senka? An older guy, you never heard of Senka. Right? And yeah.
That's not possible.
Yeah, it's there. So he says, these days, if someone rings the doorbell, everyone hits the floor. It's a very funny bit. But the purpose of a home isn't that God should stay locked up in there.
We're both getting at the same time.
It's the whole idea is that the godliness should get out. The purpose is the godliness should flow to the rest of the world. God shouldn't remain a secret. These two brothers that were notorious for making trouble.
You and one of your brothers. Got it.
It wasn't notorious. My brother. So the principal was at the wit's end. The father was at wit's end. So there was a rabbi in town, an old rabbi, big booming voice. So I said, if he can't shape these boys up, no one can. So the rabbi decides he's going to do some divide and conquer. He calls in the younger brother, reaches over the desk, says, "Where's God?" He doesn't answer. "Where's God?" He's thundering, "Where's God?" Kid runs out of the office and goes to his brother, says, "God's missing," and they think we stole him. Right? The purpose of the Beis HaMikdash was that godliness should flow to the entire world. to have an effect on the entire world. That means, like it says in the Medrash, that when Mashiach comes, Jerusalem will be, Israel will have the holiness of Jerusalem, and the whole world will have the holiness of Israel. Meaning, the ideas of godliness, of goodness, will expand, won't remain just in Eretz Yisrael. That's why, if you see in text 5, Kings 1, in the beginning of Kings 1, talks about how King Solomon built the temple. King David was not allowed to build the Beis Hamikdash. He asked, God said no. He said, because you fought too many wars, you spilled too much blood. So the Beis Hamikdash is for peace for humanity. Therefore, your son, who has peace in his name, Solomon, Shalom, he's going to build the temple. So David said, is there anything I can do? So David bought the land. David laid the foundation as much as he can do. But Solomon ultimately was the one who built the temple. And it says about a temple, he made vayas laboyes chaloides shkufim tumim. He made shkufim atumim windows. What's shkufim atumim? What does that mean? Let's look at text 6. The Gemara explains what that means. So he says, in the old days, before glass was readily available, people didn't have glass by the window. So what they would do is, and the walls were very, very thick. If you've been to any archaeological digs, so what they would do was, the outside of the window, the outside was very narrow, and the inside was wide, because you wanted light to disperse in the house, and you don't want animals. I mean, if you also by war, right? This way you can shoot. But the Beis Hamikdash, it was reverse. The inside was narrow, and the outside was wide. Why? So because the idea is, but text number 6b, the Medrash says, why did they do that? In order that godliness should spread out to the whole world. And in the Beis Hamikdash, what item personified light? I shouldn't say personified, it's not a person. But it's the most symbolic with light, the Menorah. So now the Gemara in Shabbos asks, if you're familiar with the narrative of the Jewish people traveling through the desert, you'll know, and this was back in Parshat B'Shalach, that God led the Jewish people with a pillar of fire the entire night. Right, during the day they had the sun. So what did they need the menorah? The menorah was lit in the afternoon, burned through the night, but they had a massive pillar of fire. They need light. How did the kids fall asleep? I don't know, but they definitely didn't need light. Like the Gemara's text number 7, does God require light? Didn't the children of Israel travel for 40 years exclusively by God's light? So he says, rather, the light is testimony to the world that divine presence rests among Israel. So if you're right, if the point of the menorah was to receive God's light, then yet the cup should have been up. Because the point of the menorah is not to receive, but to dispense. The menorah wasn't there to give light to surrounding immediate surroundings. Was to light up the world. Let's look what the Rebbe says. It says, when the cups. This is text number 8. Where are we? The menorah's entire purpose was to shine light. So when the cup is in a natural state of serving others, it's positioned upside down. So it all depends on how you look at a cup, right? A washing cup, its natural state is like this. No, the washing cup is natural state is to
Wobbling.
Yeah, wobbling. Right? So it says when the cup's purpose is for holding liquid, then its natural state is the base at the bottom, operating and the opening upright on top. The cups of the menorah symbolize the idea of irrigating and illuminating the world. So remember we said, the Gemara said everything has to be in its natural state, but for the menorah, this was the natural state. The idea of the Beis Hamikdash and the idea of the Jewish people is to teach the world what it means to live a godly life, which only makes it very ironic that they're bringing us to court and accusing us of war crimes. So what's going on to say, if Israel attacks Rafah, it's going to be extra war crimes or whatever it is, and the Hague ordered, I think the Netherlands, not to sell Israel any more F-35s. You saw that? because they're going to use it to attack. I mean, Israel doesn't need them. They have F-35s. But so they're teaching us. All right. Any questions? Oh, so now we're gonna come to the what we started at the beginning of the class. The teaching is only for rabbis.
That's what we said.
Yeah. So someone actually asked me a week or two ago, I think it was on Shabbos, something, going away, I'm not going to be here. I forgot exactly what it was. So they said, there's still going to be services? There's still going to be services. Oh, the shul doesn't revolve around the rabbi. What do you mean? The shul exists. Services go, because that's what a community needs. But when the rabbi's not there, we continue going, because everybody it comes together. It's not one person. We all come together to daven together. So there's no such
Minyan Thursday morning, whether or not you're there.
exactly.
We've got nobody else to blame, but you know.
Right.
We'll blame you.
Yeah, this minion.
Well, this week we had a minyan. Last week we had a minyan. I mean,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
What'd you say?
I said, it's killing me because he wakes up so early, I have to get up.
yeah.
You could come. It's okay. You just don't count.
So what's the point?
You count. It's not for 10 guys. For 10 women.
How come that says Westinghouse on it, when it's the same Japanese manufacturer, or Chinese manufacturer
I know.
by Northern?
I don't know, because that's a very important question, which we have to stop the class and answer right now.
I see
All right.
the thing there.
So now we're gonna get into it. So every single person is a candle, and everybody, by the way, intrinsically knows it. And every time, there's a tragedy, they always do a candlelight vigil, and whenever they want to do something with a person, it always is represented by light. Remember, by 9/11, the pillars. Everybody understands why that. They haven't learned Kabbalah, but they understand that a person is synonymous with light. I mean, before they figured it out with their little mini tea lights, the electrical tea lights, King Solomon said it very nicely. He said a lot of things nicely. He said, text number 9, he says, Ner Havaya Nishbasada. The candle of God is the soul of man. There's a rabbi. I actually never heard of this rabbi before I started learning this class. Rabbi Yitzchak Shrem. He was from Aleppo, Syria. Interesting bio. He was a rich rabbi, and he was born to a rich family, and he supported Torah learning in Aleppo, Syria. By the way, it's important to point out that Syria had a very, very large Jewish community for a couple thousand years, a few thousand years, more than a couple, probably 3,000 years, already from the first temple times. But Israel made the mistake of establishing a free country, so there goes that, right? So he says, interesting, it's known that the soul derives pleasure from lighting candles. You ever read John Gray's book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus?
Heard of it.
And so he writes in his book the difference between men and women. He said that men really are this modern day cavemen. And what would the cavemen do when they came home from hunting, gathering? They would sit and look into the fire. So he said the modern day equivalent is a guy comes home and wants to watch TV. He's not watching TV because he wants to understand anything. He just needs to zone out. He said women are communicators. So the problem is he wants to zone out, she wants to communicate, and they don't understand each other. So interesting idea. Anyway, but everybody knows. You sit around the campfire. You're going to sit. There's a mitzvah. When is the mitzvah to look at candles?
Shabbos.
Hanukkah. For a half hour, you're
Yeah,
not
that's it,
allowed.
right.
You're not allowed to do anything. You have to sit and look at the candles, right? Or play dreidel or something. Whatever. Do it by the candles, because he says it's known that a person derives pleasure from lighting candles. It becomes excited from the enjoyment of light. It's the peace of light. Therefore, it's drawn after its light. Even though one is a physical flame and the soul is pure, nevertheless, both are a type of light. Spirit, so your godliness is abstract light, but we're attracted to it because we all have a neshama. So we're attracted to light. This is why King Solomon says, soul is light. A person's soul is God's lamp. So now, we all are a menorah, just like the cups on the menorah are facing down. Why? Because the purpose of the menorah is to give off light. A person is not meant to receive. A person is meant to give. The natural state of a person is giving. That's why the more we take, the more miserable we feel. The more we give, the better we feel. When we volunteer our time, when we help another person, there's a whole discussion. I think it's in the Gemara also. Who gains more of an experience, the giver or the receiver?
Usually the giver.
The giver. The receiver gets whatever he needs. But the giver, in fact, some givers wanted to try to make the mitzvah as altruistic as possible. They would give in a, one of the craziest mitzvahs is the mitzvah of shechicha. It's a forgotten produce. So there's a mitzvah, because every mitzvah needs intent, and when you're doing it with intent, there's you, and you're doing it to get closer to God. Whatever, there's some selfish, whatever it is. There's one mitzvah you can only do by not trying to do the mitzvah. That's shechicha. The mitzvah is that if, let's say, a farmer is harvesting his field, and he bundles together whatever that's wheat, right? And he leaves the field and he forgets the bundle, he should leave it there. Now you can't forget on purpose. If you do it on purpose, it's charity. It's not shechicha. It's the only mitzvah you can do without doing. So one time there's a story in the Gemara where a kid came home and told us.
Only mitzvah you do by not doing it.
Right. By not intend to doing it.
Yeah.
It happens on its own. And it's a mitzvah you do. Usually if it happens on its own, it's not a mitzvah.
Oh, it's basically what he's saying is when you get home, you say, "Oh, I forgot to do that." But then your wife says to you, "But that's a mitzvah."
Right.
So now you know you didn't forget, you just...
So the Gemara tells us a story. The Gemara, the Medrash, tells us a story where a kid came home, told his father that he forgot a bundle of wheat, or whatever it was, and he was afraid how his father was going to react. Because again, this is the time where before machinery, a bundle of wheat was. Father got so excited. We have to go to Jerusalem. We have to go to the temple, bring a Thanksgiving offering, because I forgot a bundle of wheat. It's a mindset. But this is the message of the Menorah. Every single person is in a state to give. There is no such thing as you don't have what to offer. A person comes into shul, for example, and you say hello, and you welcome them, you show them where it is, or they have trouble reading, or you could have trouble, let's say the rabbi's davening for the Amid, the guy's having trouble with his tefillin, whatever it is, or things are going on. There is no such thing as I can't. That's for someone else. And this is what the Rebbe points out: why the Rambam purposely drew, or why the Torah. I have to edit it because it makes it sound like the Rambam made it up. No. Why the Torah purposely says that the cups should be narrow at the bottom, not wide. 1 second, let me just finish this thought. Because even a person who's narrow at the bottom, meaning he says, I'm just starting, I have nothing to offer, I'm very, very narrow. It's not true. Maybe it's narrow for you, but for the other person, it's a lot. Yeah.
Think about this.
Okay.
Here's the cup.
Okay.
We're talking, it's in that position.
Yeah.
The light from the menorah hits that and it reflects back so it can illuminate this way. Mm-hmm. If it was in this position, the reflection would be down into the ground, not into the area.
It would be a shadow.
It would be a shadow.
That would be. I never heard that. It's very interesting. Yeah. So
I
just want to show. I want to show it on the camera. So what Larry's trying to say is that when the cup is facing down, then the light reflects out.
It's gold. It's reflecting out. It's reflecting away. It can be seen by more people.
Right. Although, by the way, what you're saying is an interesting concept, but most people didn't see it. Hardly anyone saw the menorah. Only the Kohanim saw the menorah if they opened the door. And people didn't walk into the main sanctuary.
When they opened the door, the illumination fills the room until they close.
I'm saying, but again, it's not a literal light. It's a conceptual, godly light. And if the cup is in this position, then it loses that shine. It's a very nice point, and I never heard that before. I wonder if it's brought down somewhere. Let's learn what the Rebbe says. Text 11. It can be that in regard to our own personal spiritual journey, our base is narrow and limited, and this could be because you're at the beginning of your journey, or even later for whatever reason. But when it comes to influencing another person, and especially when it comes to influencing the world at large to make it a home for God, we must know that we must engage in this service without any limitations. Our state must be that of a wide open, upside down goblet. There's a saying in the Gemara, which is equivalent of if people who live in glass houses don't throw stones. Before you start correcting someone else, make sure. The Gemara has a similar: adorn yourself before you adorn someone else. Right? Basically, make sure everything checks out. The Rebbe addresses that philosophy. Maybe
put on your oxygen mask or putting on the kids' oxygen.
Right. So maybe in previous generations that applied, but now there's so many people who are starving for Judaism, who are starving for some religion, starving for some connection to something greater than the materiality. I don't know if you guys watch the Super Bowl or
Super Bowl?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I couldn't understand a Super Bowl. Why they got Super Bowl? I couldn't get it. Right?
You realize it's 58 years that they're celebrating.
Yeah. But the Rebbe says, look at the Rebbe says the take on that philosophy. Text number 12. He says, just as we work on improving ourselves, so we also have to engage with others as well. We must not rationalize and say, I still have plenty to work on myself, and I have all these flaws. So what right do I have to go talk to somebody else? Rather, as the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, Shalom Deber, says, we have no idea what still needs to be accomplished in the task of preparing the world for the Mashiach. Could be the Mashiach is waiting for this guy to put on film, for this guy to say Maidani. So we must not make any rationalizations. Any opportunity we encounter to help another person spiritually, physically, for sure, we have to seize it. And this goes into the Menorah. You have to be a Menorah, give off light, and your cup has to be shining, it has to be facing downwards, so you can have tremendous amount of influence. And even if you're a narrow base, don't worry about it. And it will conclude with a story, which is that this college student once asked the Rebbe by Farbrengen for L'chaim. If you look in the video, people would go over to the Rebbe would talk, and then they were singing in between the talks. And people were singing, people would approach the Rebbe with a question sometimes, or say L'chaim. So this kid came to say L'chaim. So the Rebbe asked him, are you talking to other students about putting on tefillin? So the guy said, I don't put on tefillin. So he said, why is it their problem that you don't put on tefillin? You don't put on tefillin. Okay, that's a you problem. But you have to try to work to get those people to put on tefillin.
Two birds, one stone.
So, whether you feel qualified or not, it reminds me of the joke. The guy had a problem. He would worry about everything. So he went to a guy who was a professional worrier. And this guy charges like $1,000 a session. So and said, $1,000 a session. Says, how are you going to pay for it? I don't know. Let him worry about it. Right? I mean, you're going to wait to be perfect. You won't get anything done. Every person is in a stage where you can help another person. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have nothing to work on your own. Yeah, we all have advancements to make in our own observance and in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs better. But what does one thing got to do with the other? You think all 5,000 Chabad rabbis around the world are perfect? Obviously not. We're all works in progress. Every person is a work in progress. Imagine the Rebbe would wait for students to be perfect before sending them out. No work would be done. Or like this famous story where a guy, I think it was Microsoft, he made a crazy mistake, a massive mistake. Cost the company like $10,000. No, when the story came out, there was a lot of money. So, okay, I'm $100,000. So he went to submit his resignation to his boss. his boss said, I'm not letting you resign. What are you talking about? We just spent $10,000 teaching you what not to do. Meaning, stop thinking you have to be perfect. The Rebbe would say, you know ALEF? You teach ALEF. That's the way it's got to be. All right, summary. In Maimonides' sketch of the Menorah, the goblets are depicted upside down. The windows that are based on English were also opposite. Now we're inside, white outside. The reason is because the purpose of the Menorah and the Beis Hamikdash is to spread light into the entire world. So the goblets of the Menorah were upside down for the same reason. The whole idea is that it should be pouring light, pouring goodness and godliness out into the whole world. And we are a Menorah, the human soul, like King Solomon said, is a lamp. So our natural state is to give. And it's not a person's responsibility to calculate if they're worthy of influencing other. The important thing is to act. You have something to share it. You never know. You never know. I'll end up with the story. I know we're ending off a little early. Because you never know when you share something. So there was a girl from an Israeli family, fairly observant and traditional. Many girls and boys, after they finish the army, they go traveling in the Far East. The problem with the Far East is a lot of idolatry over there, with their meditations and everything else. So unfortunately, this girl got caught up in one of these cults, or I don't know, whatever it is, and she decided that she was going to convert. So her parents said, "Listen, please, before you make this drastic decision, come home." So she agrees to come home. So the local rabbi in the neighborhood was a Chabad rabbi. He's a young guy, and he went to the rabbi and said, "Listen, Rabbi, you got to speak to our daughter. She's going to convert." The rabbi said, "But I don't know anything about this kind of thing. I'm like the rabbi in Pembroke Pines. I know to read the Torah. Answer 1 + 1 kind of questions." He said, "Rabbi, you're our rabbi. You got to help." So okay, she walks into the office and she's expecting some, discussion about philosophy, theology, meaning of life. This guy has no idea what to tell her. He has zero experience in this field. So the Rebbe instituted learning Maimonides every day, either 3 chapters, 1 chapter, or the mitzvah of the day. Something called the mitzvah of the day. In the course of a year, you finish. Many times it's more than 1 mitzvah. You finish 613 mitzvahs throughout the year. So he said, the only thing that came to his mind is, I'll learn the mitzvah. It was the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, that if you find something that belongs to someone else, Torah says you have to return it, or at least hold on to it until. So he discusses it with her. She walks out of the office thinking, this rabbi is an idiot. I came all the way from India, Timbuktu, whatever it is, to discuss philosophy and religion, and this guy is talking to me about. Okay, she gets on a plane, goes back. So it was the morning of, or the morning before. So they're walking up. I think these temples have a lot of stairs, right? Because these temples you have to, because you're always going up, and it's not meant for people with bad knees. So when they go, on the way up, she sees on the floor a wallet. She picks up the wallet. She sees there's an ID in there. There's cash. She goes to her guru. He says, we got to do something about this. And forget it. People drop stuff all the time. So what do you do? What do you do? Take out the cash, throw out the wallet. What do you mean? What do you do? People leave things here all the time. And then she remembered. The rabbi told us, Torah says when you find something, you have to try to return it. She realized this religion isn't true. The Torah is true. She turned around and went back to Israel. And this rabbi, when he learned that thing with her, he had no idea the impact he was going to make. It's the first thing that came to his mind. Many times we cut ourselves short, sell ourselves short, and we think, I'm in no position to make an impact on another person. It's not true. You never know. You share a nice idea of Torah or something with another person, you have no idea the impact. So if you know ALEF, the Rebbe said, teach ALEF. Have a very good week. Is it off? Is it on? Is it off? Is it on?
The numbers are still going, so.
All right.